Israel's military says it has taken full control of the strip of land that serves as a buffer zone between Gaza and Egypt. The Israeli military claims the Philadelphi Corridor provides a weapons smuggling route into Gaza for Hamas militants. But it's also a key part of a delicate peace arrangement between Israel and Egypt. Israel has also deepened its incursion into Rafah in southern Gaza.
Israeli helicopters firing towards Rafah, near the southernmost city in Gaza, where Israel's military says it has seized control of a key stretch of land. The 14-kilometer Philadelphi Corridor that has long served as a buffer zone between Gaza and Egypt.
In recent days, IDF forces have taken operational control of the Philadelphi Corridor along the border between Egypt and Rafah. The Philadelphi Corridor served as an oxygen pipe for Hamas, through which it regularly transits weapons to the Gaza Strip.
The capture of the corridor, where Israel says its troops found these rocket launchers, could complicate Israel's relations with Egypt. Cairo has accused Israel of using the allegations of smuggling to justify illegally occupying the stretch of land. This latest development is also a signal of Israel's deepening offensive in southern Gaza, despite growing international calls for it to stop. Israel's military chief of staff visited troops in Rafah, assuring them they will push on.
We are here for a couple of reasons. This is the last Hamas brigade that remains with all its capabilities, and we want to dismantle it.
Israel insists it needs to carry out the Rafah operation to rescue the hostages Hamas took in the October 7 terror attacks, despite condemnation from allies and aid groups alike, as civilian casualties mount. Israeli bombardment in Rafah on Wednesday hit a building in the As-Salam neighborhood. Meanwhile, the Hamas-run health ministry announced the death toll in the Gaza war had risen above 36,000.
The problem is that military operation has been conducted in such a way that the number of civilian casualties and the destruction of civilian infrastructure and housing are unprecedented.
And there's no end in sight. Israel's national security advisor says the offensive in Gaza is expected to go on for at least 7 more months.
Let's get some analysis now from Marina Miron. She's from the War Studies Department in King's College, London. Good to see you, Marina. Why does Israel say operations in Gaza will continue at least till the end of the year?
Good morning. Well, what we have to understand is that such operations are very complex, and it's a very optimistic assessment that the operations will continue for at least 7 months. I would be very cautious on naming a timeline in terms of when this operation might end, because looking at history of counterinsurgency campaigns, they can go on for decades, and a military victory doesn't necessarily mean that the war is over. Therefore, I'm sure that it is said for more political reasons to relieve some of the pressure on Israel rather than an accurate assessment of what might actually happen on the ground.
You said that it's mainly for political reasons, and I'd like to sort of like you to potentially expand on that, because I think military analysts around the world are generally saying that the stated aim of destroying Hamas cannot be done militarily. So you are saying that this operation could continue even beyond the end of the year because it is primarily for political reasons. Is that correct?
Well, what I'm trying to say here is that a military defeat of Hamas in its present form and shape doesn't necessarily mean that Israel will be more secure. And the reason for this being is that Hamas is not only a military organization, it has an ideology. So what is essentially happening is that the civilian casualties that are mounting in Gaza might be pushing the population that would have been neutral perhaps prior to this war to support Hamas and to carry on its ideology. So in essence, if you destroy militarily all of the Hamas fighters, you don't know how many of the civilian population of those children whose parents have been killed will be joining to carry on the cause. And it will not be an immediate thing, but there has to be a political plan for reconstruction of Gaza, for ensuring law and order in order to prevent it from happening.
And doesn't the Israeli military know this?
Of course they know it, but it's not the task of the military to solve political questions. I think it's a task of the political leadership to ensure that there is a viable political end state. Military can do only so much, and it has its set objectives. However, it is the political leadership that has to take care of that situation. And I think the international community has to also be involved in resolving this crisis that we're seeing and paving the way forward. What is going to happen to Gaza once the military objective is achieved?
Is there a way for Israel to achieve its military objectives at the same time as protecting civilians?
It is a very difficult task to protect civilians while also trying to destroy Hamas. One of the reasons being is that Hamas does live among the civilians. They are not wearing designated uniforms in many cases, so it's very difficult to distinguish them from civilians. The other problem is the problem of military necessity and proportionality. When does military necessity eliminating, say, key leaders of Hamas outweigh the collateral damage that it would cause amongst the civilians? So you have a lot of ethical dilemmas to solve. What do you do? Do you cause a lot of damage but take out the main Hamas leadership, or do you take it slow, potentially risking more deaths over a longer period of time, and do it more surgically?
We'll leave it there for the moment. Thanks for joining us today, Marina Miron from the War Studies Department at King's College London.
Thank you for having me.
Let's get more now from DW correspondent Rebecca Ritters in Jerusalem. Rebecca, why does Israel say operations in Gaza will continue at least till the end of the year?
Well, Beresh, Israel has maintained since the get-go, since the very beginning of this war, that its main military aim is to eliminate Hamas. Now, as we're seeing, Israel hasn't managed to do that so far. They're continuing to carry on that military aim in Rafah, as you just heard in that report there. And we're also seeing fighting resume in areas that had been officially cleared and confirmed, that they had pulled out of in central and northern Gaza. And Hamas are fighting a guerrilla warfare, and many experts are, in fact, warning of what they say might be a forever war. It's a sort of like insurgency-style warfare happening in Gaza that Israel won't be able to come back and say to the Israeli population, we did it, we eliminated Hamas, and therefore we're inevitably going to see this war drag on. That's certainly what experts are saying. And of course, we have the issue of the hostages there, as you heard in that report, and we've been talking about now for months. Israel needing to also be able to come back, bring the hostages back to the many people in Israel who are calling for that. Now, of course, you've also got the political angle, Benjamin Netanyahu really fighting for his political survival and knowing that when such a time comes that the war ends, he will have to face questions regarding how something like October 7 was able to happen under his watch. He's been saying it's not fair, it's not right to have to answer those questions as the war is ongoing, and that would come at the end of the war. So there's little incentive on his part as well to try to bring this to a close. But definitely the main aim is going to be, because of this desire or this stated claim that they're going to eliminate Hamas and bring back the hostages, something that they haven't been able to achieve to this date.
And Rebecca, how much consensus is there amongst Israelis about this ongoing offensive? Well,
since the very beginning, again, Israel, most Israeli, a majority of Israelis have been in support of this. They see this as inevitable. They see this as a must they want to see Hamas eliminated and that threat. They don't want to see another attack happen like what happened on October 7. All understandable. There are, of course, voices within Israel, a small amount of voices who don't want to see this war continue, that are calling for a ceasefire, and a small but growing number of people who are calling for anything to be done in order for the hostages to be able to be brought back. So they're calling for, any deal to be made with Hamas so that their loved ones can come home. That's being spearheaded, of course, by the families of the hostages, but that is a growing voice here. But by and large, overall, we're seeing, the support maintained for this conflict until Israel manages to meet that aim of eliminating Hamas. But the media landscape here, it should be said, is very different. The discussion in the mainstream media here isn't what we're seeing on international news and reading in international papers. It's much more focused on the hostage situation and the threat of Hamas, and people certainly are hoping that Israel will be successful in meeting those aims.
And in the midst of all of this, Rebecca, the UN is warning of famine and is also saying that the amount of humanitarian aid entering Gaza has dropped by 2/3 since Israel began this assault on Rafah this month. What is the Israeli government saying about that?
Well, the Israeli government paint a very different picture. They say that a lot more aid is getting in, but the numbers, the way that it's calculated varies. The way that the UN calculates it is different to how the Israelis do, and the Israelis include the numbers coming through places like Ashdod port, which is on the Israeli side, and that's not including trucks that then actually enter into Israel. So we're seeing a huge drop in the amount of aid. The UN have been warning for a very long time that famine is imminent, and now we're seeing 50 trucks a day, or 58 trucks a day, I should say, on average, compared with nearly 180 before this May 7 incursion. That is far, far fewer than the 500 to 600 trucks a day needed to stave off the humanitarian catastrophe that's unfolding there.
We'll leave it there for the moment, but thanks so much for joining us. Rebecca Ritters in Jerusalem. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping has promised help for the Gaza Strip and spoken in favor of a peace conference, saying the war cannot continue indefinitely. At a meeting with top representatives of Arab countries, he indicated China's support for the creation of a Palestinian state.
China firmly supports the establishment of an independent state of Palestine that enjoys full sovereignty based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. It supports Palestine's full membership in the UN and supports a more broad-based, authoritative and effective international peace conference.